What if I told you that somewhere out there, hidden in garages, private collections and secret warehouses, are muscle cars so rare you might never see one in person? We're talking about factory-built dragsters, million-dollar convertibles and muscle machines so powerful, they were deemed too extreme for the streets. One of these cars could outrun a Ferrari. Another was built with a Le Mans winning engine. And the number one car? It was so fast that Ford had to cancel production because they were afraid of it. Stick around, because today, we're counting down 7 of the rarest, most legendary muscle cars ever built. And trust me, number 1 will leave you speechless. Our first car on this list looks like your everyday Ford Fairlane. But don't let its conservative styling fool you. This was a factory-built race car disguised as a street machine. Back in the mid-1960s, the muscle car wars were reaching a boiling point. Chevy had the Chevelle SS, Pontiac had the GTO, and Mopar was dominating the strip with the Hemi-powered Belvedere. Ford, they needed something brutal. Something that could destroy everything in its path on the quarter mile. That's when they unleashed the 1966 Ford Fairlane 500 R-Code, a rare, no-nonsense drag racing machine. At the heart of the Fairlane 500 R-Code was Ford's most feared engine, the 427 cubic inch Cobra V8. This engine was officially rated at 425 horsepower, but if you believe that number, I've got a bridge to sell you. Insiders knew the real figure was closer to 500 GP, and when modified for racing, it could easily push past 600 horsepower. But Ford didn't stop at just giving it a massive engine. They went all out to make sure it was ready for serious racing action. Dual Holley 780 CFM 4-barrel carburetors sat on top of an aluminum high-rise intake, feeding the 427 with as much fuel as possible. The car came standard with a 4-speed top-loader manual transmission, because anything less would have been an insult to its power. Ford ditched all unnecessary features including the radio, heater, and even sound insulation to save weight. The hood, made from fiberglass with a massive functional hood scoop to help cool the engine. This wasn't just a car, this was a weapon. Ford didn't intend for this car to be a grocery getter. In fact, it was built specifically for NHRA superstock drag racing. The R-Code's lightweight body, combined with its absurd power, meant it could sprint down the quarter mile in just 12.5 seconds. A blistering time for a factory-built car in 1966. Even crazier? With some tuning, many owners were able to dip into the 11-second range. Ford only built 57 units of the R-Code Fairlane 500, making it one of the rarest drag-ready muscle cars ever produced. Today these cars are like hidden treasure. Many were either wrecked on the drag strip or modified beyond recognition, making original survivors incredibly hard to find. And when one does pop up for sale, well, let's just say you'll need deep pockets. A fully restored 1966 Ford Fairlane 500 R-Code can sell for over $250,000, with some examples fetching even more depending on originality and history. This car might not be as famous as a Mustang or a Chevelle, but in the world of muscle car legends, the Fairlane 500 R-Code is a drag strip assassin that refuses to be forgotten. At number 6, we have a muscle car that looked like your grandpa's weekend cruiser, but packed a drag racing secret under the hood. In 1963, Chevrolet had a problem. Ford and Chrysler were dominating the NHRA superstock drag racing scene, and Chevy needed a weapon to fight back. So, they took the already powerful Impala and gave it a complete race-focused transformation. The result? The 1963 Chevrolet Impala Z11, one of the rarest and most underrated factory race cars in muscle car history. At the heart of the Z11 was something special, a 427 cubic inch W Series V8, officially rated at 430 horsepower. But let's be real, Chevy wasn't fooling anyone. Just like Ford and Mopar, they underrated their engines to meet NHRA regulations. The actual horsepower? Easily 500 HP, and with some tuning it could push even higher. How did Chevy squeeze out this much power? A special high-rise aluminum intake manifold to increase airflow, dual Carter AFB 4-barrel carburetors, one of the best setups for drag racing at the time, a heavily modified compression ratio for more explosive power, but brute force wasn't enough. The Impala was a full-size car, meaning it needed to shed some weight. Most people think of the Impala as a big, heavy cruiser. But Chevy knew that if they wanted the Z11 to win races, it had to go on a diet. How did they make it lighter? Aluminum hood, front fenders, and bumpers replaced the standard steel parts. Radio, heater, and soundproofing? Gone. Even the front sway bar was removed to save weight. The result? The Z11 weighed approximately 300 pounds less than a standard Impala, making it shockingly fast for its size. Chevy built the Z11 specifically for NHRA drag racing, and boy did it deliver. With slicks and a skilled driver, it could run the quarter mile in the 11-second range, faster than most street cars of the 1960s. To put that into perspective, a stock 1963 Corvette Stingray ran the quarter mile in the mid-14s. The Z11? A full 3 seconds faster. That made it one of the fastest production cars in America at the time. Chevy only produced 57 units of the Impala Z11, and most of them were put through hell on the drag strip. Many were crashed, blown up, or scrapped, making survivors extremely rare. Unlike many collectible muscle cars, the Z11 was never a mainstream legend, which means people often overlook them at car shows and auctions. But for the few collectors who truly understand its history, the Z11 is a hidden gem worth a fortune. A restored 1963 Chevrolet Impala Z11 can fetch $350,000 or more, depending on originality and history. This Impala may look tame, but don't be fooled, it's one of the most hardcore street-legal race cars ever built. At number 5, we have a muscle car so rare, so powerful, that it has become the holy grail of Mopar collectors. Imagine this. It's 1970. You walk into a Plymouth dealership looking for the ultimate street machine. The salesman tells you about a Cuda with a 426 Hemi, a convertible top, and performance that could humiliate most sports cars of its time. But there's one problem: the price. This car was so expensive back then that almost nobody bought it. And that's why today, it's worth millions. This is the 1970 Plymouth Hemi Cuda convertible, one of the rarest muscle cars ever built. By 1970, the muscle car wars had hit their peak. Chevy had the Chevelle SS 454, Ford had the Boss 429 Mustang, and Dodge had the Challenger RT. But Plymouth, they unleashed the ultimate weapon, the Hemi Cuda. Unlike earlier Barracudas, the 1970 model was completely redesigned with aggressive styling, wider fenders, and a more muscular stance. It was finally worthy of Mopar's most legendary engine, the 426 Hemi V8. Engine and power: 426 cubic inch Hemi V8, 425 HP, and 490 lb-ft of torque, officially, but real-world power was closer to 500 HP. Dual 4-barrel carburetors mounted on a high-rise intake, massive shaker hood scoop that literally shook when the engine revved. The Hemi Cuda wasn't just another muscle car, it was an untamed beast. It could rip through the quarter mile in the mid-13s, and with slicks and the right tune, it could hit low 12s, which was supercar territory in 1970. The standard Hemi Cuda was already an elite machine, but here's what makes the convertible version truly legendary. Adding the 426 Hemi to a Cuda convertible cost an extra $871, which was a huge amount in 1970. Most people who wanted speed opted for the cheaper hardtop version instead. Between 1970 and 1971, Plymouth only built 21 Hemi Cuda convertibles. Only 12 were made in 1970, and in 1971, just 9 cars left the factory. That's right, Plymouth only made 9 Hemi Cuda convertibles in 1971, making them one of the rarest American muscle cars of all time. And if you're wondering why they stopped making them, it's simple. Insurance rates were skyrocketing and muscle car sales were starting to decline. The Hemi Cuda was just too powerful, too expensive, and too extreme for most buyers. Because so few people bought these convertibles when they were new, they have become some of the most valuable Mopar muscle cars ever. Auction record: a 1971 Hemi Cuda convertible sold for a staggering $3.5 million at auction. Even less pristine models still sell for over $2 million. Think about that. A car that originally cost $5,500 in 1971 is now worth over $3.5 million. That's one of the biggest value increases in muscle car history. Owning a Hemi Cuda convertible isn't just about having a rare piece of history. It's about experiencing the golden age of muscle cars. Driving one is like wrestling a wild animal. The steering is heavy, the suspension is rough, and the second you floor it, the rear tires scream for mercy. And the sound, that deep, guttural roar of the 426 Hemi is something that no modern car can replicate. The 1970 to 71 Plymouth Hemi Cuda convertible isn't just a car, it's a legend. It's a symbol of raw American horsepower, a relic from a time when manufacturers pushed the limits without holding back. Would you rather own this car, or take the cash equivalent of $3.5 million? Let us know in the comments below. But we're not done yet. Next up is another legendary convertible, one that carried the King of Muscle Cars title back in the day, and is now worth over $1 million. At number 4 we have a car that was once known as the King of Muscle Cars. Imagine walking into a Chevrolet dealership in 1970, and being handed the keys to a car that would become one of the most powerful muscle cars of all time. With a factory-rated 450 horsepower, the 1970 Chevelle SS 454 LS6 wasn't just fast, it was a street-legal rocket that could destroy almost anything in its path. And if you think the hardtop version was rare, wait until you hear about the convertible. By 1970, muscle cars had reached their peak of performance. The Camaro, Mustang, Challenger, and Charger were all fighting for dominance. But Chevy had one ace up their sleeve, the Chevelle SS 454 LS6. This wasn't just another Chevelle SS. This was the biggest, baddest, and most extreme version ever built. Engine and power 454 cubic inch LS6 V8. The largest engine ever put in a Chevelle at the time. 450 horsepower and 500 pound-feet of torque. More power than many race cars of the era. Holley 780 CFM 4-barrel carburetor delivering insane amounts of fuel. Forged steel crankshaft and high-compression pistons, built to handle serious racing. Chevrolet claimed 450 horsepower, but dyno tests have shown these engines were actually pushing closer to 500 horsepower. 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 5.4 seconds, faster than some Ferraris of the time, quarter-mile time in the high 12s. Beating most competitors straight from the factory, this wasn't just a muscle car. This was a factory-built drag racer disguised as a street machine. The Chevelle SS 454 LS6 was already rare. Chevy only built 4,475 LS6 models in 1970. But here's where things get crazy. The convertible rarity factor. Most buyers opted for the hardtop, which was more practical and slightly cheaper. Only about 20 convertible LS6 Chevelles were ever built, making them one of the rarest muscle cars on the planet. That's right, less than 24 convertibles were made. And today, only a handful are confirmed to exist. These cars were so rare and undocumented that for decades, muscle car experts weren't even sure if LS6 convertibles actually existed. It wasn't until barn finds and private collections started surfacing that people realized this legendary car was real. Because of their insane rarity and raw performance, the LS6 convertible has become one of the most valuable Chevelles of all time. Auction prices. A fully restored LS6 convertible sold for $1.2 million at auction. Even non-matching numbers, LS6 convertibles can sell for $500,000 or more. If a true factory original LS6 convertible with complete documentation surfaced, some experts believe it could fetch $2 million or more. From a $4,500 car in 1970 to a $1 million muscle car today, the LS6 convertible is one of the best performing investments in automotive history. Owning an LS6 Chevelle isn't just about the history, it's about the experience. Imagine yourself behind the wheel. Your hand grips the 4-speed manual shifter, your foot presses the gas, and suddenly, pure, unfiltered American power erupts as you're thrown back into your seat. And the best part? Unlike modern cars with computers and traction control, the LS6 is raw, unfiltered, and completely unforgiving. You make a mistake, it will punish you. But if you know what you're doing, you'll never want to drive anything else. The 1970 Chevrolet Chevelle SS 454 LS6 convertible is more than just a car. It's a legend. It was built at a time when car manufacturers weren't afraid to go all out. No regulations, no restrictions, just pure power and performance. Would you rather own this car or take the cash equivalent of $1.2 million? Let us know in the comments below. At number 3, we have a muscle car that was so exclusive, so rare, that for years, it was almost completely forgotten. When you think of Pontiac's legendary muscle cars, the first name that probably comes to mind is the GTO, the GOAT. The car that kicked off the muscle car wars in 1964. But in 1971, something happened that would make one version of the GTO one of the rarest muscle cars in history. This is the 1971 Pontiac GTO Judge convertible, a muscle car so rare that only 17 were ever made. The Pontiac GTO Judge wasn't just another trim level, it was a high-performance street-legal race car meant to take on the best of the era. First introduced in 1969, the Judge was Pontiac's way of competing with cars like the Roadrunner and Chevelle SS. Named after a popular comedy sketch on TV, the Judge package was Pontiac's way of saying, "Order in the court. This is the ultimate GTO." By 1971, government regulations and rising insurance costs were killing the muscle car era. But Pontiac wasn't ready to back down just yet. Engine options for the 1971 Judge convertible included the standard 455 cubic inch V8 with 335 horsepower and 480 pound-feet of torque. There was also an optional 455 HO, or high output, engine with upgraded camshafts and better airflow. The 455 HO was Pontiac's last stand in the muscle car wars. With brutal torque and a reputation for shredding tires, it was one of the last truly great muscle car engines before emissions regulations choked performance. 0 to 60 miles per hour in 5.7 seconds. Impressive for a 4,000-pound muscle car. Quarter mile in 13.9 seconds. Still fast enough to take down most competitors of the era. For 1971, these numbers were seriously quick, especially considering the government was already trying to kill big block muscle cars. Most GTO Judges were coupes, but for a select few buyers, Pontiac offered something incredibly special. The Judge convertible. Why is it so rare? Only 357 total Judges were built in 1971. Of those, only 17 were convertibles. And of those 17, only 6 had the 455 HO engine. That means this car is rarer than a Lamborghini Miura, rarer than a McLaren F1, rarer than almost any Ferrari ever made. Because of its insane rarity and end-of-an-era status, the 1971 Pontiac GTO Judge convertible has become one of the most valuable muscle cars ever. Auction prices. A fully restored Judge convertible recently sold for $1.1 million. Experts estimate that a perfectly documented original could break $1.5 million. Even a non-matching numbers version could still fetch $500,000 or more. Not bad for a car that originally cost $4,000 in 1971, huh? Owning a 1971 GTO Judge convertible isn't just about having a rare piece of history. It's about experiencing the golden age of muscle cars. The steering is heavy, the exhaust growls. And when you press that gas pedal, the 455 HO engine roars to life like an untamed beast. Unlike modern muscle cars with traction control, the Judge is raw, unfiltered, and all about driver skill. If you don't respect it, the 1971 Pontiac GTO Judge convertible is more than just a car, it's a time capsule. It represents the last days of the muscle car wars, before government regulations and fuel crises killed the horsepower revolution. Would you rather own this car or take the cash equivalent of $1.1 million? Let us know in the comments below. At number 2 we have a car so rare, so powerful that even the most hardcore Corvette collectors can only dream of owning one. Imagine walking into a Chevrolet showroom in 1969, looking for the most extreme Corvette money could buy. The salesman lowers his voice and says, "There's something special we can order for you, but it's not in the brochure." This wasn't just any Corvette. This was the ZL1, a factory-built race car disguised as a street machine. And with only 2 ever sold to the public, it's one of the rarest and most expensive Corvettes of all time. Under the hood of the Corvette ZL1 was something truly special, an engine so extreme it was never meant for street use. 427 cubic inch ZL1 V8, the most powerful Corvette engine ever. 100% aluminum block. In 1969 this was revolutionary. Weight 100 pounds lighter than the standard iron block L88 engine. Officially rated at 430 horsepower, but real-world tests showed it made closer to 550 horsepower. Heavily modified internals forged steel crankshaft, high compression pistons, and an aggressive camshaft profile. Chevy officially rated this engine at 430 horsepower, but that was a lie. On a dyno it easily pushed over 550 horsepower, making it one of the most powerful engines ever put in an American car at the time. This engine was literally built for racing. It was used in Can-Am series race cars, and Chevy built the ZL1 Corvette just to see what would happen if they dropped a pure race engine into a road-going car. Record-breaking performance for 1969, 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 3.8 seconds, faster than many modern supercars. Quarter mile in 11.2 seconds, straight from the factory, on street tires. Top speed, over 190 miles per hour, making it one of the fastest American cars ever built at the time. This wasn't just a fast Corvette, this was a road-legal monster, faster than almost anything from the late 60s. The Corvette ZL1 was shockingly expensive. In 1969, a standard Corvette cost around $4,781. Adding the ZL1 engine and required upgrades more than doubled the price to over $10,000. To put that into perspective, you could buy a brand new Ferrari for the same price as a ZL1 Corvette. It was just too expensive for most buyers. The result? Almost no one ordered it. Chevrolet planned to build more, but in the end, only 2 cars were sold to the public. Because of its extremely low production numbers for years, collectors thought all ZL1 Corvettes were lost forever. But then, one resurfaced. And when it went up for auction, the car world was stunned. In 2023, one of the 2 known ZL1 Corvettes sold for $3.2 million, making it one of the most expensive American cars ever. The second car is still missing, and if it ever resurfaces, experts believe it could sell for over $4 million. Imagine finding a forgotten ZL1 Corvette in an old barn. You just discovered one of the most valuable treasures in automotive history. Driving a ZL1 Corvette is not for the faint of heart. No driver aids, no traction control, no ABS, just raw mechanical brutality. Heavy steering, instant throttle response. Every movement demands precision. Every press of the gas pedal is a fight for grip. The rear tires constantly struggle to handle the power. If you make a mistake behind the wheel, this car will not forgive you. But if you know what you're doing, this is one of the most thrilling driving experiences on the planet. The 1969 Chevrolet Corvette ZL1 isn't just a car, it's a myth. A top-secret experiment that was never supposed to exist, but somehow found its way onto the streets. At number 1 we have a car so powerful, so exclusive, that even Carroll Shelby himself called it the ultimate Mustang. Imagine a car built to outrun Ferraris, withstand 200+ miles per hour speeds, and be so ridiculously fast that Ford had to cancel production because it was just too extreme. This is the 1967 Shelby Mustang GT 500 Supersnake, the most powerful Shelby Mustang ever built. And with only one ever made, it's the rarest muscle car in history. By 1967, Carroll Shelby had already transformed the Mustang into the legendary GT 350 and GT 500. But Shelby wasn't the type to sit still. He wanted to push the Mustang to its absolute limit. So when Goodyear approached Shelby with an unusual request to test a new line of high-performance Thunderbolt tires, he saw an opportunity. Instead of using just any car for the test, he built something truly insane. Shelby took a standard GT 500, ripped out its 428 Police Interceptor engine, and replaced it with something straight from Ford's Le Mans winning GT 40 race car. Under the hood of the Supersnake was an all-aluminum 427 cubic inch V8, the exact same engine that powered the Ford GT40 Make-2 to victory at the 24 Hours of Le Mans. The most powerful Mustang engine of its era, 427 cubic inch Le Mans 5.8, a full race-spec engine, over 600 horsepower, more than any other Mustang at the time, high-rise aluminum intake manifold for massive airflow, dual Holley 780 CFM 4-barrel carburetors for insane fuel delivery. This engine wasn't just fast, it was a monster. With over 600 horsepower, the Supersnake had nearly 200 more HP than a standard GT 500. Shelby didn't just build this car, he put it to the ultimate test. Mind-blowing stats for 1967: 0 to 60 miles per hour in 4.3 seconds, faster than most supercars of the time, quarter mile in the high 10s, on stock tires, top speed, over 170 miles per hour, faster than any production Mustang for decades. The Supersnake was so fast that it left Ferrari 275 GTBs and Chevrolet Corvettes in the dust. Shelby originally planned to build 50 of these cars, but there was a problem: it was way too expensive. In 1967, a standard GT 500 cost around $4,195. The Supersnake was priced at over $8,000, double the price of a normal GT 500. That was more expensive than a Shelby Cobra 427 or even some Ferraris at the time. Ford quickly realized nobody would buy it, so they scrapped the plan. And just like that, the Supersnake became a one-of-one legend. For years, the only Supersnake built sat in private collections, but in 2019, something incredible happened. In 2019, the Supersnake sold for $2.2 million, making it the most expensive Mustang ever sold at auction. Experts believe that if it went back on sale today, it could break $3 million or more. The Supersnake didn't just break records, it became the holy grail of Mustang history. Driving the Supersnake is like riding a wild animal. No electronic aids, no traction control, no stability systems. Instant throttle response. Step on the gas and the rear tires light up. Brutal power delivery. Even at high speeds, it keeps pulling harder. This isn't a car for beginners. If you don't respect it, it will punish you. But if you know what you're doing, this is the ultimate Mustang experience. The 1967 Shelby Mustang GT 500 Supersnake isn't just a car, it's a legend. It was the Mustang that Ford was too afraid to build, a machine so powerful that it was decades ahead of its time. If you had the chance to own this car, would you keep it or sell it for $2.2 million? Tell us in the comments below, and that wraps up our list of the rarest muscle cars ever built. Which one blew your mind the most? Let us know. And if you love legendary muscle cars, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more insane automotive